Now, the ultimate nightmare for any fighter pilot has just become a bit of a harrowing reality on the ground in Iran. The high-stakes rescue mission is currently underway in order to try and rescue one of those American pilots who was shot out of the sky when the Iranians brought down the F-15 fighter jet. It's been well over 24 hours when the pilot was in fact shot down and then ended up in the landscape with the IRGC patrols and also local bounty hunters looking out for him. Every second makes the difference between freedom and also capture by the Iranians on their soil. Our next report tells you more.
The silence of the Iranian desert has been shattered by the scream of an ejection seat and the thunder of a falling fighter jet. An American F-15E was shot down over Iranian airspace. US troops managed to rescue the pilot, but the second crew member is still missing. To be shot down over enemy soil is to enter a world where the hunter becomes the hunted in an instant. For a US fighter jet's crew, the transition from supersonic superiority to a desperate scramble for survival is the most brutal test of human endurance. The mission is now a frantic race against time. US Special Operations Forces have reportedly crossed the border, launching a daring search and rescue operation into southwest Iran. Their target is the remaining member of the downed F-15E Strike Eagle. The Pentagon is throwing everything at this: attack helicopters, special tactics squadrons, and a wall of electronic warfare to mask the extraction. But for the pilot on the ground, the ordeal is a masterclass in survival. The first rule is survive, find food and water. They have to stay hidden till help arrives. Then comes evasion techniques. They vanish into the terrain before the smoke from the wreckage draws the enemy. Standard operating procedure dictates moving only at night. With the Iranians imposing a bounty for the captured crew, the threat level is high. If captured, the pilots are trained to give minimal information to their captors. Then the US soldiers are trained to identify escape opportunities and flee their captivity. The pilot carries a survival kit with a high-frequency radio, a beacon, and a sidearm, but their greatest weapon is stealth. Tehran has already mobilized its forces to scour the crash site, offering massive rewards for the airman's capture.
The airman knows what he needs to do to remain concealed and not get captured, to try to avoid capture. And again, this would be very serious if the Iranian regime were to capture the downed airmen. This would be quite a serious incident.
The downed pilot must navigate a labyrinth of jagged mountains and dry riverbeds while avoiding thermal drones and ground sensors. As special forces close in, the airmen must signal with surgical precision to avoid friendly fire or revealing their position to the IRGC. Inside hostile territory, every sound matters. Every delay increases risk. The rescue team must locate the pilot, secure the zone, and exit before opposition forces converge. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Dr. Avner Cohen, who's a professor of non-proliferation and terrorism studies at the Middlebury Institute, and he's joining us live on this broadcast. Dr. Cohen, considering what has transpired in the last 24 to 36 hours, where these American fighter jets have been shot out of the skies, in your assessment, what do you think has gone wrong? Did America underestimate the Iranian air defense capabilities? Because the American president was pretty clear over the course of the last few weeks, had been claiming that the Iranian air defenses had been destroyed and America enjoyed complete air dominance. But that clearly does not seem to have happened. What's your assessment?
Well, I think that the statement of the president were a little bit too far and too excessive. I think naturally in a situation like this, the United States does have dominance, but it doesn't mean that they can fly everywhere in complete safety. Obviously, the air defense, the Iranian air defense could be fragmented, and small elements could stay in various places, possibly in high locations such as the mountains. And I mean, I wouldn't say it's a miracle, but I think it's quite an achievement, quite a record. The fact that for over 30 days, the United States and Israel were able to engage in a highly intense combat situation, and yet without losing any aircraft by enemy fire. This was the first case that it did happen, actually two at one day. So it's not that surprising. I think the statement of the president were too far and were too excessive, and the language was obviously not the right language.
And also, given the fact that there is still one pilot of that F-15 fighter jet that was shot out of the skies who's still not accounted for. This pilot is said to be somewhere in the place where the plane was brought down. In your assessment, how do you think this would have changed the conversation inside the American war room of Donald Trump? What do you think would be going through Donald Trump's mind at this moment?
Well, nobody can predict and nobody can conceive what's going on in the mind of Donald Trump, so I'm not even trying to do that. I think it's a very serious situation. It's a symbolic, but also it's practical situation. To lose air combat person to enemy in that situation, it's a big deal. It could have impact on what will happen in the next few days, 2 days, after the expiration of the ultimatum. And I think both sides making efforts, very probably heroic efforts on the U.S. side to try to get their man and to get him out of the place. Yeah.
All right, let's also now talk about this ultimatum that Donald Trump has given, where 6th of April, he said, is the deadline, after which, if Iran does not strike a deal and concurs with the American demands, then Donald Trump has made it clear that he'll go after Iran's energy infrastructure, possibly even at the desalination plants. And if that were to happen, the Iranians have made it abundantly clear, the energy infrastructure of the Gulf nations and of Israel, the desalination plants of the Gulf nations and Israel will be hit by the Iranians. That will be a massive, massive escalation. In your assessment, do you think, will Trump walk the talk and invite the kind of retaliation that the Iranians say will happen if the Iranian energy infrastructure and desalination plants were struck?
Very, very difficult to know. It's a very tough situation. In a way, he very strengthened his own trap. I think the Iranians for the next 2 days are not going to move beyond what they've done. And right now there is a very vague preliminary conversations through mediators. I think the Iranians feel that they have the time. They can move into attrition war as long as the regime survive. They can handle with it. No matter how much they are being hit. At the same time, the president, who has time pressure much more than the Iranians, and he wants to end it. He wants to end it with victory. He wants to open the Strait of Hormuz. He put a very, very strong ultimatum. For him to postpone it for another time, to be the third time, it would be difficult. So he kind of trapped. I do not predict move on the Iranian side. So it may be the case that he will have to take some actions, maybe not as much as he warned, maybe still some kind of warning, doing something, but also warning. To do what he promised to do would put the United States as a war criminal. And I wonder whether it would go all the way. So it's a very, very tough situation that both sides kind of playing with each other, have a very different sense of time. And it's difficult to say. I think that he's trapped himself and most likely will have to take some kind of action.
It'll be very interesting to see as to what happens in the next 48 hours. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Avner Cohen, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you.